came from an original project from Professor André Carneiro here and me about archaeology between Portugal and Spain. It was 2 years ago, no, or 3, and then we were working on 3. We were working on this, and well, we have this publication in Bar Series, in British Archaeology Review. Well, was a really interesting project, and the idea was to continue this idea, but in a larger perspective and with a broad audiences. And well, this is the idea that comes also speaking with several researchers in other universities and different projects. This is something, at least for me, really key, that there is not enough divulgation. No? There is not enough transfer of the knowledge that we are working on in the GIS application, especially, but other also, not only geographical information system, but also other things that are related to that. Well, we began this network with the idea of disseminate all these issues. Well, this is a pilot trial. It's something that we want to do as an example of what can be done, no? Because there is a lot of things that today are used for this kind of studies, like for example the CAA conference, or several journals that works in this regards. I don't know, for me it's really interesting that we can gather people that they are working in these respects and try to see if within us we can see better things. No? So the idea of the first year, let's say, of this project, of this idea, is to do these conferences, try to divulgate the knowledge of senior researchers and put them into a folder in YouTube or something like this. People that can see it in the future, and also try to look at the possible output of that, no? With this dissemination. We plan also in this pilot project to do some mailing networking, that people can disseminate their knowledge or their articles or books or conferences, whatever in this issue. And mainly the idea is to know each other and can have a more direct way, to speak of this. For me, it will be perfect if this will grow larger and people are really interested, and we can have plenty of people working in this. Because, for example, one idea that I am working is to create an association based on this network. In this association, we can have several universities, research groups, institutions in all ways that can be part of this association. In fact, can gather better results for this kind of study. So all will depends in which people are interested, and let's try in this working if we can gather enough attention on this kind of studies, and people will reproduce also, because we are going to present now one study ourselves, André and me, about our own work, our perspectives, our ideas. And the idea is not only to present in a clear way for other people to reproduce, it's also to engage in the discussion, to see possibilities, to criticize how we can improve it. People that do not know how to do this kind of methodology, that can ask directly. So the idea is to have this kind of direct channel for developing and for disseminate those knowledges. So this first session of this 9-part session with high-level professors, some of those are here I see in the list of the reunion, in the meeting. So thank you very much for being in this first work. today we will probably will not use 2 hours for our staff. So we are going to present our work in half an hour, 40 minutes, and we want to engage in the discussion. No? This is the key point, I think, for all us. No? So I'm going to share, if you want something to ask or to include, you're free to speak anytime, okay? We are going to beginning with this first session with a presentation on Professor André Carneiro from Évora University and me from Pedro Trapero from Cádiz University. The idea is I sent to you an idea, I don't say, I sent to you all the preliminary program. My idea is to enhance this with the titles and abstracts of all the people who are going to present their works and send to you. But I was moving some because people are busy, and in this regard, it's difficult to set up one conference in May or in June right now. So things can move, no? But this is the good point of working online. So we are going to begin this presentation about modelization of the Roman settlement in North Alentejo using legacy data, connection between cities, itineraries, and main agricultural resources. No? Professor André Carneiro is going to present to begin the presentations. So whenever you want it, you can begin.
So good morning, good afternoon to all of you. I hope that the sound is clear to everybody, and I would like to congratulate our host, Pedro Trapero, because this is an idea that I think it's strongly needed to create networking, collaborations, and mailing lists, and every kind of cooperation between researchers. I think it is a very welcome idea, and I think that can materialize in something bigger, like ArchaeoSig some years ago has materialized in a volume that can be consulted by every researcher. So, dwelling into the issue today, we are going to present, Pedro and myself, we are going to present some ideas and some reflections, and also some methodological proposals about a territory that we have an ongoing work from almost 30 years, which is the Alto Alentejo, the North Alentejo in Portugal, the territory of the ancient province of Lusitania, in which we have made studies that are like a holistic approach to the rural settlement in the territory. That I want to mean is that you can pass, Pedro. Pedro is going to pass the slides, which is a territory that is very large with a huge dimension. With several problems in the historiography of the research, because we have areas that are more or less well known, and some other areas that are almost not didn't enter in the archaeological research, are almost virgin areas for the research. And an heterogeneous landscape also. We have huge and almost dramatic changes in the landscape and the physiographical conditions of the territory. So when I meant holistic approach, is that we try to understand all the elements of what could be the ancient landscape in the Roman period. That is to say, not only the sites. Generally in archaeological research, sites are viewed almost as islands, isolated from the surroundings. We are trying to understand the relation, the connectivity between sites, between the road system, between urban centers, and also the use of the landscape, the main resources, the main agricultural features, etc., etc., etc. So our approach from the beginning was to understand almost in a holistic, almost completely, the several dimensions of the ancient Roman landscape. You can pass, Pedro. Thank you. This is an area that has, for archaeology, high potential because it hasn't been damaged or changed by the human impact in the last centuries. That is to say that we have nowadays a territory that is mainly agricultural in its economical profile, has low density of population, haven't had dramatic changes in the industrial activities, transforming activities, etc., etc. So we can use it as a laboratory in order to understand the landscape, the evolution of the landscape as a palimpsest, and also is a territory that has good potential, agricultural potential, good resources, hydrical resources. We are between the Tagus Basin and the Guadiana Basin, two major rivers. And especially in the Roman period, nowadays is the backside of Portugal, but in the Roman period it was a huge, an interesting territory because it was between the two major centers of the province, the Roman province of Lusitania. We have for the east Emerita, the capital of the Roman province of Lusitania, and to the west we had Policipo, nowadays Lisbon, which was the major Atlantic harbor and probably the commercial capital of the province. And we had corridors of connectivity. You can pass, Pedro. We had corridors of connectivity. We have major itineraries. But what is a bit puzzling for us is that we don't detect, we cannot see which were the main urban centers. We know that there was a urbs, a Maya. It was a small city that developed into a city that gained some influence. But Amaya, as you can see in the map, is almost in the northeastern corner of the territory, and we have also some mentions to Abelterium as a Mansiu, as a place where the Route 14 passed, but we don't know if Abelterium was a city or some kind of secondary settlement. So we have a huge density of sites that are clearly rural sites like the Villae, but we almost don't know cities, urban places that could be nodal centers for the organization of the territory. Évora is the main city that is almost 80 kilometers from south of the border of this territory, and Emerita Augusta is almost Augusta Emerita is almost 100 kilometers to the east. So it's a territory that seems to us like self-organized in some kind of rural profile of the exploitation and rural activities in this territory. Please, Pedro. So as I told you, it is nowadays still diverse landscapes. We have a big, huge heterogeneity in the landscape, which is most interesting for us in archaeology. We have from plain territories with the characteristic montado, the dehesa in the Spanish terminology of the cork exploitation, and we have slopes, several slopes. We have areas that have almost no potential for agriculture. We have also areas, and they are very near of areas that have tremendous agricultural potential. And we have hills also, and almost mountains. So it's a very diverse landscape, and of course that this geographical feature was a major key element for us to understand the Roman settlement. Please, Pedro. So as I told you, we have some problems with data because this area, it's very interesting because in Portugal we almost all of us have the idea of Alentejo as a massively studied area for archaeologists. Is almost a paradigm that Alentejo always attracted the archaeological studies, but in fact the truth is that we don't almost don't have data for this territory, and especially the legacy data. The archaeological inventories are very scarce. All this territory have 18 municipalities. Nowadays in Portugal, the municipalities have competencies in the archaeological gestion of the territory. And as you can see, in 18 municipalities, we have Marvão that had 2 archaeological inventories published, and then we have 4 municipalities, Castelo de Vide in the 70s, Ponte de Sor, Fronteira and Vila Viçosa nowadays in this century, that have that has inventories that are available for the archaeological studies and for the people that are interested in these issues. So almost all of the area is still to study and to analyze and this you can change, Pedro. This creates several disturbances, several asymmetries in the archaeological knowledge, because this is an essay to try to understand the what could be the density of sites per kilometer, and as you can see, we have sometimes direct correlations between what could be the density in the Roman period and what we know nowadays, but sometimes we see that are very difficult parameters for us to analyze. For instance, the territory, the municipality that has a larger density is Fronteira, almost 1 site per 4 square kilometers, 56 sites in the average, in the total, but that is because Fronteira is a territory that has been studied since 2000. Other places, other municipalities have lower densities, but of course we are talking about the geography of the research, not the geography and the density of the Roman period. We have to keep this in mind. Please, Pedro. So this is the graphical, and also the graphical that compares the sites that we had when we started our broader research in all the territory. In 2007, we had a density of sites, and you can see that in some territories, we didn't found new sites, but in other places we could progress a little more. So things in some areas, things kept on moving, and that is because of our work, but also because of some specific works, especially in the case of archaeological works in the private corporations. Please, Pedro. Well, what you are going to see in terms of methodology has already been published by Pedro and myself. It's some methodological proposals and some ideas that are already materialized in a small paper. And for us to try to analyze the landscape, not only in an empirical view, but also with some parameters that Pedro will explain, in order for us to try to analyze and to rationalize a bit what could be the areas in which the Romans are present, but also what we can call what we can call in the terminology of Stefano Campana, the empty scapes, the areas in which we don't know sites and try to explain why don't we know sites, and also the dimensions, the logics of the estates, of the villa estates, because we have some prejudices in the Roman period in Portugal. The Roman villa estates are always seen as major places, major territories that the villas coordinate, and as we shall see, our evidence is not in this direction. Please, Pedro. I pass to Pedro. I think it's now for you to get into this chapter, I think, or no?
Yes, I'm going to continue from here. As you see, this is good that this is the first trial by ourselves, because I am the main organizer and need to keep people in and at the same time present. So it's difficult at the first time. Well, I'm going to continue from the objectives of the project about this article. André explained very well the case study and the problematics. We were seeing that the settlement distribution is really depending on the situation, the landscape, and the geography, but also an historical questions. No? So we were wanted to understand if we can see, for example, historical issues are really hard to model. This is why we also want to explain this small article to all of you, because I think it's worth it, the idea to understand things that are not only refers to the archaeological distribution of sites, and it's more related with the mentality of the people. So the idea was try to see if we can model the constraints, expressed by surveyors through GIS. So, when Romans go to a territory, and the general point of view from the surveyors that you need to settle, people, colonists, and so on, but also they do like a cadastre, trying to set up the differences of each private position, each private property. And the point is that although they do or not this kind of centuriation or sort of, the point is that they need to know how to measure, how to know those villages. For a case study, it's really interesting is this theoretical point of view, this GIS approximation help us to understand the settlement pattern of villas and other stuff. So this is the first idea, a theoretical approach that give us clear knowledge, let's say clear perspective on how to give more questions, to understand different issues. We began, for example, with this kind of sources. Probably all of you know about the surveyors. And this is one of the main more important ones, like, for example, how they divide territories. The limes of each city or the territory is mainly based on anthropic criteria and natural ones. The natural, which are the ones that we can understand using geography, is mainly the ones that are in this fragment: rivers, streams, mountains, the hill of the top of the hill. So this is the basins of watershed, this kind of issues. Also, you have some of the anthropical ones, like the funerary monuments and so on. So this is the hypothesis. If the villas has their own territory, for sure they have, they used to delimitate those properties the criteria we have in here with other conditions. So if these conditions are from geographical origin, the anthropical ones are more difficult to understand, but if they were the natural origin, then we may understand more or less where they are. Of course, we have the issue because, it's not also the problem of the territory itself, also is the problematic of the data we are going to work. So we focus especially in understanding, for example, the key sites in the territory. So in this case, we do the model. The model is not the reality is a representation we do, especially modeling in this kind of issue, for me at least, and I think for all the people that works with this kind of a computational things. Models are a representation of this reality. So in here, I try to model the representation of the pediatric distribution. No? Thanks to the good work of ANDRÉ CARNEIRO in this territory during his PhD and the other workers and other researchers before and after. We have a plenty good data, which is for me the key important thing for understanding these kind of things. We cannot try to model things if we have the problem about the data is correct or not. Is this site is here or is 100 meters to north? It's really important to have the exact locations and to know exactly if one site is from one typology, let's say, or not. It's difficult, of course, to settle the differences, and the criteria are more large to explain. But let's say that we can have a strong information to know if this is a villa, if this is a vicus, or sort of, or this is a minor archaeological site. For us, it's really interesting. We're going to see in the end of the presentation these minor archaeological sites, how we can model with this. So, using in correlation that the villas will have a large area, we can more or less understand which area is theoretically correspond to one of the issues. And also we have one question, historical one, from the sources that are that we don't have those big cities, as André already said, but we have a really important roads, in this case 3 main roads that are in the itineraries, and more or less part of the settlements are in line with this. So it makes totally sense that the concentration of part of these archaeological sites are related to that. This is also important to understand those empty spaces we are working and we thinking of. Of course, there is other issues that we can explain, but we have not enough time, and probably in other presentation we can go into it. So those sources, in order to replicate the process, we can do it because we have the data available. This is also a really important issue when we're working on this kind of studies. If we don't have then the needed quality of data for doing the modeling, it's really hard to do this. In fact, we can do that because we have the DTM. Now even we have better resources with the LiDAR, for example, was published in Portugal last year. And we have known the actual boundaries and land use, so really it's also important to get how it's working today, the territory. And really important also because we have, for example, data from botanic and edaphological origin that is really useful for us to understand the conditions of the terrain and how it should be worked in the actual days. Especially this website, WebSig, have this kind of data. We use part of these repositories or open access repositories that are for completely different origin or for completely different purposes than us. But we can gather this information and use it. We're going to see. So the model itself, we try first of all to try to in a theoretical way, in a modeling issue, try to take those surveyors' ideas and go into the territory. This is really hard. This is more or less the model we do. Try to get several, let's say, constraints of the terrain from the DTN, like surface. Then, for example, try to understand also the hydrology. For that reason, we calculate the rivers, streams, and also we calculate the passings of each small and major water course. Also, we use the information of the roads. In this case, the Roman roads, we know that they are, because for sure there will be secondary that we don't know. Try to reclassify this information to get reclassification for a map terrain, and then try all of those to do in two different analyses. One of those is a mobility algorithm. In this case, we use a Tobler from 1993, which is simple to do in a massive function, no? And to reproduce, because we can easily convert it into time. So we are not accurate in the modeling, in the algorithm we do use for that, because the point is not the distance, it's the comparison between one or the other cases, no? And then we use this, for example, the map algebra raster calculator to set up which are the surveyors advices. This is the key point of the modeling, because how we can transform the mentality of this agronomist to an actual number, let's say, no? Was a really hard issue to set up. The main concern here is that if we imagine that we are going to do a boundary, when we calculate with distant map cost, we can get isochrones. No? Isochrones are, let's say, layers from one point to the other, like a painting, no? Where people is going to move. So the same color, let's say, is the same time moving from the center to the exterior. No? In this case, for example, let's say, imagine the first color is 1. No? So you have 1 hour, 1 minute, each side you're using, for example, 1 hour. So the first color is going to be 1 hour out to the central point. No? So our idea is like, okay, if we are going to move and go into a mountain, then you will need more time to go there. So for example, the mountain will be 3 hours, for example. Well, using the same idea, we're going to put, okay, we are representing the cost distance mapping, but not to represent the moving difficulties, is to represent the probability of being a boundary around this site. So for example, if you're moving in a plain area, okay, all will be represented as 1. But if you have several boundaries that you need to cross, then the effort will be higher. So it's a way to represent the different surveyors' conditions in a graphical way. No? So we calculate those isochrones, and then we do this map comparing. And in this case, we use this, let's say, not good issue that we do the manual draw, because we adjust some of the polygons manually. Some of you may say, okay, but this invalidates the whole process. And in fact, it does, because the theoretical way has a lot of errors in the uses. But this is something that also we, let's say, using as a representation only, because we also use another issue, which is the cost distance allocation, that is also really useful for understanding where should be those limits. So the point will be like, okay, in the case where those limits are really far away, then we use the manual draw. This is something also very interesting for us, because this is something in the first trial of the article. We're going to see also that, let's say, the metadata of those was not considered by us. So this is something that one of the reviewers also give us the advice. Okay, try to use this type of tool, and we develop the model even better. No? So try to see this in a more graphical way. The first issue we used was this creation of the river and the streams, because those are one of the key limitations of the territory. We calculated all the possible basins that can be limits or can be used or sense in the landscape as a limit. Try also to compare with the theoretical typical uses of delimited in the territory, like for example, distant polygons. This is also really easy to do, a really mathematical way, but has not a correlation with the reality. Also, we take into account all the issues, like for example, the slopes and so on. Try to figure out if we are going to, because for example here, the territory is not the same conditions in the slope. There are more flat areas and more slopey areas. So in fact, the background of the presentation is the territory, is the DTM of the territory. So it has several contrasts. So we need to assign also if this is this if the same model can be applied to the whole territory or not, because maybe we need to apply piece by piece, let's say, area by area, and also take into account the Roman system, no, the road system, as already explained. And of course, the movement. This is, for example, time consuming, moving from the center of the area around. So what we do, in fact, what we do is to combine different costs, the accumulated cost, using all of the layers we already explained, and try to set up different boundaries. Case study, for example, to see one specific cluster. No, here, for example, we have the Roman villas with these red dots. Then we have more different layers. One of those is the topography. You have several lines. No, but the idea is to explain one issue. We have the rivers. We have the basins. We have a road system. We have. Imagine if we are going to focus, for example, on let's say this villa over here. If we use only, for example, the Thyssen polygons, you see my mouse, no? In this case, for example, the area around, let's say, the theoretical territory of this villa will be this one. But, for example, to separate from this other one, then the Thyssen polygon is clearly useful for that. But, for example, if we are going to correlate the boundaries we know for sure that it was a Roman road here, then it's more probably that the villa will focus over this, let's say, west area, no? Southwest area of the road, and probably this other will be from the other side. So the point is, try to represent this in a model can be done with this kind of analysis. No? In this case, for example, we use them also the mobility, and we see that more or less. In this case, also has sense because when we calculate, for example, the areas of each villa, we have numbers that for us are not so impressive. Let's say now the area around this villa is more or less the same area as, for example, Columelas or Barros in their agricultural works. Books, they said, okay, the villa will have like this. So it's not a really big or really small areas. In fact, also we measure each site with each representation we have and see in this case if those areas make sense or not, if they are really big or really small, and compare this with the others in the territory. Then, for example, the calculation of each settled area. Here we have a really key issue because you see, for example, that the Thyssen polygon in relation with the differences in the accumulated cost in the territory is more or less the same. Why is this? Because, in fact, villas are presenting in their own basin, more or less, even in this territory. So here is a really good distribution. The territory resemble more or less the same in the case of the Thyssen polygons with the mobility. No? But when we correlate and try to reconstruct different layers, in this case the proposal was doing mainly automatically in all the case studies. You see, for example, there can be several spaces, empty spaces. In this case, for example, let's say this is an empty space, but what is the key point here? That we have this villa over here, we have those other, and we see that clearly this is probably an empty space. If not, this villa will control, let's say, all this territory. But for us, it's like, okay, but probably we are missing something here. So this is why we could, let's say, straight right here to represent the other case. No? So the proposal makes this correlation of territories that are far more accurate than the Thyssen polygon. Sometimes, for example, it's the same. Sometimes it's really different. For example, in here, it's completely different, the correlation. And it's a more realistic approach. For sure, it's not the territory of each site, but allow us to give more specific questions. No? So the results, in fact, allow us this, no? to ask for the other stuff. No? In this case, those proposal territories allow us, for example, to do this. That for us is really interesting, the inside-outside secondary entities. And this is a key question when we are working in archaeology, and especially when we try to see these secondary settlements, these farm sites, or whatever name in each region, each site we are using different terminology. But in fact, for example, when we have a big settlement, like for example in this case a Roman villa, we know this is a villa because it was excavated, has mosaics, and have, I don't know, balnea or any kind of clear issue. Then maybe we have a fifth in 50 meters, we have another concentration of materials, and you say, okay, but this is an area, another space of this. Maybe it's the Rastula, or maybe it's whatever, no? If we have something 200 meters away, you can say, okay, but this is maybe something also from the peasants or for the slaves, or whatever. If we have something 500, 1,000, which is the limit we are going to focus, because something 1,000 meters or 1 kilometer away from the villa, it can be also part of this villa. No? So with this method, the point is that we can set up like what are those sites, that secondary sites that are in the logic into the villa. So it can be dependencies of this villa, and which are out of the logic of these Roman surveyors, let's say, and then can be those peasants, there can be colonists or whatever. No? So it's a way to understand these two correlations and allow us also to understand which is the distribution of territory. And also the point that we already speak about from André is also those empty spaces. This is really tricky point here. And the more important, well, I think we have this article published because mainly this issue, because those empty spaces now make more sense. And there are empty spaces, for example, we are not going into the details of the article, but some of those are lack in the investigation. We have sites where we don't have strong studies before. Sometimes they are empty spaces because the territory is really poor. For example, in the case of the west, no, with near via the Tajo River with sand, soil, and it's really bad for agriculture and living. In fact, so okay, that those are logical empty spaces. But the other, for example, they are really interesting because we have empty spaces when we don't have villas, but we have those small settlements. So which are the correlation? When we go, we finish our article, let's say, in this question, and we see that there are more to do with this kind of issue, because this can be also related with the resources of the territory and how this society use these resources. No? So we go into another article that we are going to publish. In fact, it's going to be published right now. We have the final proofs now, so we are going to put it before the publication. Continue this work. So we use the previous model, in fact, and try to correlate with let's say, the sources of the territory. Which sources we are working on, which is the type of the soil. We have plenty of this information, as I already told you. We try to see the sources of these sites. This is in Spanish, the legend, sorry, but it was the Foresta, no, the Silvicoa, the cattle, vineyards, cereals, or uses, for example, for other kind of uses, like, for example, near the river. So we can correlate in this model. We try to correlate each type of soil with the possibility of use one or another type of issues. This is something that I already done in my PhD, so we use the same method in here. So this is nothing new. We can speak about it if you want it. But the methodology of this is try to see three different uses. No, they're in determined area where we don't have this information, the agropecuary areas, and the areas from Saltus. And this is the key point. I'm going before. You see that those empty spaces we can also understand with a key question in the historical landscape. Let's say, where are those saltus? Where are those empty spaces that are into the system? Let's say, it's an area where are not those repartitions, those centuriation or cadastre, especially where are from this, for example, ager publicus, no? And we correlate those with areas with an proposed for this fundus with the optimal crop area. For example, in this case, if those layers are not from us. So, for example, the good nor irrigated crop area or the optimal nor irrigated crop, this is not something that we use. This is the EPIC-GIS, the data from this repository that I already explained before. And we use this data. So let's say we can compare those gaps in the territory with the possibility of using them for agricultural purposes, not by our opinion, but from people that will say, okay, this area is good actually for using this kind of thing. No? And also we can compare this with the potential of forestry area. This data is also official, as I told you, and this is how this landscape will have potential for, imagine you are going to do this forestry for wood or forever, and you put this kind of cultivation. Then in this area, it's going to be really good, but this region is not recommended because it's not a good soil. So let's say, for example, this gap in here is not good for a forestry, but it was not also good for, let's say, well, in this case, it was more or less good for agricultural purposes. So in here, for us, we can say, okay, but this is clearly a gap in the investigation. But in here, for example, this area is good for forestry, but it's not really good for crop. So probably this empty space was, let's say, an empty space. It was an area of saltus in Roman times. So the modeling idea of doing these surveyors gaps is related directly of how the territory was divided, and these maps, these representations allow us to understand, in a better way, the historical questions. Also, we correlate those with, for example, the actual Bayer's area, because we have the information with the optimal ones, because this is also something that we want to improve in the future. Well, the results, as I told you, those empty spaces that I already explained for all of us, and we can to correlate those with the suitability of each kind of the territory. So, for example, in here we have this correlation, and we can see, for example, clearly where we have those dots. So I'm going to give the word also to André to finish this part.
Thank you, Pedro. It's relevant to stress that this is not only a theoretical exercise, it's a multidimensional research, because we combine, and I think that was explained by Pedro, but I want to stress it, we combine data that are not only theoretical but are also empirical from the research in the field. Yesterday, in the International Mediterranean Survey Workshop, Jesus Garcia Sanchez and David Hellman and myself presented a combination of field survey results in several areas, including almost all of them in this territory. So our basis is the empirical data collected by ourselves in our projects, extensive field survey, intensive field survey, and in some cases in Fronteira, super intensive field surveys, and then the theoretical models and analysis that have been brought to you. So that is to say that this first sentence, the integration of GIS with field data, is not new, because we integrate and combine all these elements and also correlating them with the latent sources. But we are trying to bring some new perspectives in two respects. It has not previously been applied to the study area. The study area, as we've told you, is very heterogeneous in the matter of the previous archaeological studies. We have areas in which we have elements to analyze, and we have areas that are completely virgin for the archaeological analysis. And the methodological approach allows for a better understanding of the data. We try to analyze the data not only in quantity but also in quality, to bring some elements of our critical parameters. And in this kind of step forward, we created two predictive models that are provided. The first one is used to model the boundaries of the villages and the villi, considering survey criteria and transport mobility time. And we enhance the villi because the villi, the private estates, are very relevant in this area because, as we've told you, we almost don't have any urban centers. So we presume that unless from the 3rd century upwards, the villi were very relevant in the connection and the organization of these territories. And we have monumental villi, like the ones that we excavate, Horta da Torre, that are clearly sites that have the competencies in organizing the surrounding territory. And probably where we don't have villi, these areas were the empty scapes that were presented. And the second predictive model uses the first one, the one that has been previously mentioned, to see empty places that can be compared with the viability of cultivation in the area. I think this is relevant because we are not only considering the territories in which we find sites, but we are also considering the territories that probably were empty. And this area had empty scapes until the 19th century. We have documentation that allow us to understand that some areas were not populated. So in this way, it is possible to arrange a territory with a GIS model in several places, combining fundus areas with villi, secondary settlement areas with small properties, the peasants that we are trying to understand and to enhance in our research. And we have also areas of saltus and communal use of the communities. I think that is very relevant because in general in the Portuguese archaeology we don't consider this kind of economic use of the landscape. And we know that in the Roman period we had areas that were for the communities and the different settlers in the area, and the peasants. And finally, empty areas that are not clear if they are research voids, but we strongly believe that they are areas that were not settled by the communities. Please, Pedro.
Well, we are going to finish the presentation with the future of this project. No, we have those two articles, beginning, and several projects we are working on, and in the project of this investigation was innovation and territory was a small prize we gathered, and we tried to get those into a major project, in this case about WebSeek application. So we're working on this issue, so we're going to present some of the pilot trial we are working on, try to correlate this information with the archaeological sites. No. The point is that we were working on this situation, try to create those maps. No, so for example, here, this is a website we are trying to develop with this theoretical data. You see, this is it's not a typical map. You can move it and correlate those. And the idea we are working now is, let's say, a really introductory issue. because this is something we are working right now. We are discussing which layers to put, but I try to make something more or less visual for you to see. Is how we can, for example, enhance this kind of modeling using the new tools we have. In this case, for example, this Web6. This kind of tool is really interesting because we can move, and set up this in a network way. We can also add, for example, new information. For example, different type of data that we are actually working on. For example, those are the areas, those gaps we were talking about on the different villas, or the situation. So it's something that is really useful for us. We can, for example, change the classifications, add the new information, export this as a map. So this is something useful because we think that, for example, for this network we are creating now inside, maybe one of the future lines we can work on together. Let's see the people implications and so on. Is this kind of working, because will be really interesting, and we are exploring this possibility with Professor André, in this territory to create this kind of website in order to first of all take the data directly to this repository and to work in communion in a joint group. And also we are working on this, try to replicate the data we are going to put, and to see with this kind of Web6 applications, if we can, for example, give information and transfer this kind of data to the municipalities, for example, to the cultural committees, the directions that are regional organizations, and so on. So I think this is something interesting for us to take, for example, all the data that we can gather. So it's really useful for seeing, to, let's say, develop better this kind of tools, because it will be open for everyone. It's not only that the person who knows how to use GIS, the people who are going to know GIS will create this kind of interactive maps, and people from the other part, from the historical point of view, or archaeologists, or even people in the patrimony administration, can give us feedback in real time. Also, can be useful for these divulgations and transfer of knowledge. So, well, thank you very much. I think this is more or less. I don't know, André, if you want to say something new.
No, I'm just waiting for the questions or the remarks of the colleague.
The part of the meeting. So if you have any questions, you have any thoughts or something that you came into, now it's time to see the discussion.
We have Jesus.
Yes.
Sus.
Hello, congratulations for the paper. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to hear about the Upper Alentejo, as well as yesterday morning. And now we are there again.
You're the adoptive territory.
Yes.
Yeah, indeed.
Alentejo and Samoa.
I'm wondering, it's more a comment than a question, as people like to say. How can we integrate the result of intensive field survey into that model? Because I think it's the way to get a nuanced interpretation of the Villa model, right? So we know that around Horta da Torre, there are way more data than we know after the regional catalog that was fantastically made by André during his PhD. And also around Monte de Sao Francisco, the areas where we intensively surveyed years ago, that the villa is surrounded by small settlements, and we need to grasp the information about those, the chronology, where they're working at the same time, or is there any historical, I mean, evolution in the settlement pattern with and without the villa? We know that also thanks to the previous work there in Fronteira, that the villa, I mean, were necropolized or sacralized, abandoned. We need to understand well. So the data that intensive surveys are providing with the big picture. So that's my main concern: how to integrate different scales of data into the general understanding of the Roman settlement over there.
Thank you, Jesus. I think I can start to answer and then Pedro makes some comments. I think that's a very tricky and very central element in the quality of the research is the intensity, two intensities, two levels of intensity or two dimensions of intensity. The first one is our intensity. We have to create maps in which we can show the amount of times that an archaeologist was in the field and their own protocols, each own methodologies, because of course that an archaeology that walks in the field in the 50s had some concerns and some methodologies and logics that nowadays we use, and nowadays we still have archaeologists that work with some protocols of more intensity and more quality of work, and others that don't follow these criteria. So in one of the first maps we've shown the numbers of archaeological inventories. But in some cases, we have municipalities in which we don't have archaeological inventories, but we had archaeologists in the 19th century, in the 50s, in the 80s. For instance, Elvas doesn't have an archaeological map, but has lots of archaeological tradition. And how can we integrate that in our maps? Not only in terms of amounts of time, but also in amounts of density in the work. But because, as Jesus knows perfectly, in Fronteira we had several degrees of archaeological research. Myself, in an extensive field survey, and then we have intensive field surveys, and then with the Fronteira Landscape Project we had super intensive field surveys. So in some cases, we have sites that have landscapes that have been scrutinized and intensely scrutinized, and with very heavy methodological protocols. And in other cases, we have those virgin landscapes that I've mentioned. But also in intensity, also in the diachronical perspective, because we have areas, valleys, for instance, that were always been perceived as suited for the human occupation, in which we have places from the Republican period, and then the High Empire, and then we have the villas of the Low Empire with farmsteads and whatever. So we have areas in which the humans are attracted and stay there and have multi-dimensional layers of occupation, and we have areas in which we don't find settlements at all. Yesterday, in one of my classes, I've mentioned the case of one necropolis that was occupied, that has funerary evidences from the 4th century before Christ to the 6th century. That means 1,000 years of funerary occupation, which means that the communities understood that area as something like a focal point, a key point. So I think that your intervention was very interesting, because it brings us to another kind of analysis that is difficult to manage, is the quality of the data and the intensity of the data that we collect, not only today, but also in the Roman period. That is a very interesting, for instance, in the Frontier Landscape Project, Jesus knows better than anyone that we collected lots of small sites with only bricks and tiles, but from what period are those bricks and tiles? They are from the 1st century, from the 5th century, or they are permanent occupations of the same spot? Thank you.
Thank you, André.
Well, in this regard, for example, I think that I told before, no, the problem. We can do this kind of work here because we have good field data, no, with André's work. Because this is the really important thing here. If you have sites that are from different periods, it's really difficult to do this kind of relation. So we need to begin always with this uncertainty, let's say, in the data. For example, in my case studies in the south, here in Cadiz, no, nearby, I have the issue that we have plenty of data, but the problem is where is exactly those sites? Because, for example, we have a really intensive surveys over time, and some of those take plenty of data. So, for example, materials. So it was a really interesting issue when you, for example, go into the field work and try to correlate this space, and you don't see nothing because the site was, in this case, you go into the museum and you see all the materials that were collected by, in this case, by the team. So if we don't have these materials to correlate this issue, you will say, okay, this is a really important villa, but you go to the territory and you don't see nothing because there was no material. No? So also, for example, the type of survey, no? I see, for example, some case studies where you probably know where the site I am speaking of. Now, for example, you have plenty of archaeological sites, but you will see, okay, that this is not a different site. This is the same site, but it's chopped by a road or something like this that destroy part of the settlement, and you have several sites because they're moving the materials all around. So, of course, it's difficult. No, we need to use this survey, no? Like yesterday, no, like the Mediterranean workshop survey, no? About this kind of methodologies on the survey is really important. If we don't have good data in this, we cannot do the methodological approach. Any questions or ideas, comments, or else? Well, we have some people saying something in the chat about this is really interesting and comparing with other spaces, but not about questions itself. So
it's the first talk.
No, this is as I told you before. The idea is to bring people to get attend that this is something interesting, and we may try to see how this develop in the next options. Also, I'm going to say that although the let's say the program is preliminary, we can include new people if you wanted to present something, because at first we were intending to take to be clear, we need to take the big names of the first issue, try to understand people that are important, try to get them, and then we can have other people involved. So this is our first question. So anyone who wants to present or want to have an idea or want to be involved in this the generation of this network. This is a pilot idea, so we are really eager now to work with people.
I just want to say that regarding the first element, the first comment in the chat, the colleague from Ecuador, that of course this is a proposal, a methodological proposal that can be adapted to different landscapes and periods. So our aim was to try to analyze a territory, but of course that the methodology that is proposed can be replicated in other landscapes, in other land uses, etc., etc., etc. The main element is that we need to have some data that is reliable. We have to follow, of course, the methodological protocols, and we have to understand and to manage some kind of literary evidence that allows us to understand the criteria that were used or that were followed in the philosophy of settlement in a determined area.
Fernando?
Hi, thank you very much, André and Pedro, for this amazing work that you presented. And I was interested in the moduling that you made. It's a kind of modeling, like for example, Helen Goodchild did in that in his thesis. Are you also trying to module, for example, a population and production of this villa system, and it is this. It can it be interesting also for I don't know, explain in some way these empty areas. Of villas, or maybe I don't know, like if there were probably areas related to the I don't know, the subsistence of this villa system away from the near wine production, because well the people have to eat and to I don't know, and maybe that's, well, let's say peasants, in that you know that I like peasants, and I don't know, it's maybe these modules can help. And are you I don't know looking to make some models in that direction? And well, thank you very much again. I'm sorry for the camera. I'm seeing myself like very dark because I have in my office all the lights in my back. And well, thank you very much again. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. Thank you. Well, I think that I can start to the answer. It's a very interesting remark that you've made. Of course, that we don't have the quality of information that Helen had for the Tiber Valley, because we don't have as much excavated sites, relations that can be established between sites. We don't have this kind of input that Helen had for her territory of analysis of the survey, but it's an inspirational example for us. I think that for the population, we have more problems because we don't know. We have only for the majority of sites we only have surface evidence. We don't know, for instance, the dimensions of the Roman villae, if they were permanent elements of agricultural exploitation or if they were more like scenarios for the domini. In some cases, it is possible that the agricultural features of the villae were not so prominent, because you can see that the fundi that are surrounding the villae sometimes are very constrained. But we are more and more interested in the agricultural and economical features. In fact, Pedro has a research project about the economical dimension that Pedro can speak a little more about it. Yes.
Thank you, Fernando, for the question. You know, we are interested in this kind of questions, of course, and you know, when we to be clear, no, because this thing is going to be recorded, but the idea is, I think this is the divulgation is to say things that are important. We not always publish the things that we think that are important. We sometimes publish also the things that we know. Okay, this is something with a high impact, and this is something that the journal is going to be approved. So, yes, of course, I try to go in the direction you said. For example, we can ask Helen in September. It's going to speak also in these conferences, no? So we can speak with her, or if she's connected, if she is connected in some of the other meetings. But I think that the point is that the one that arises, André, we don't have enough quality in the data. We work, for example, I see, for example, here Anthony Martin, for example. No? If we are going to work in the Barcelona area, probably we can go over a model more accurate and using this kind of methodology or other kind of methodology. I don't know. For all the attendance, I think that the main point will be like, which is the question we're going to try to answer. For example, for me, it would be very interesting to try to calculate the population, no? in the countryside. Doing a better approach to calculate this, you know, there are plenty of those. For example, the easy ones could be, for example, the ones of Cesar Carreras or something like this. But in other ways, I think that the model we can gather in the case, for example, of the territory of Upper Alentejo, no, with André work, I think it's not enough good to have. But of course, we can try to see, okay, this is the first try, no? First try. So, okay, first try, we don't have any calculation of Roman population. Let's try to do it. And about the economical issues, we try to do this in a ecological project in Portugal, the PIPAs, no, the pluriannual ecological projects, with several problems and so on. We are now developing a new one, and we have some funds, so we can work on this. But to be clear, in this case, is the problem of the atomization of the information. I think it's really hard to put together the information from different municipalities with all the problematic. And in the case, for example, of Upper Alentejo with André, is easy because he's already doing this work. But if we are going to go deeper in the data, it's difficult. For example, we are now working on the pressed stones pillars, no, these the stones, no, for the Torcularia, and try to see the relationships with the sites and so on. But this difficult, for example, if we go in the south, because we have plenty of data, but we cannot rely on this information. If we go to the field work, some of those are not in the site. So if we go to the museum, the information is not in the museum. So as probably the answer will be the same as in the case of Jesus. We need to really good survey data or ecological data, excavations and so on, for doing this kind of model. So yes, this model can be applied for this kind of calculations, but probably in other spaces, not in this one.
Thank you very much.
Anthony.
Hi, from Barcelona. Okay, sorry I arrived late to the presentation, but in the I understand you are speaking about the calculation about population and estimations. No, we will have to part in the first time that is all that we will do is estimations, and there is different ways to try to calculate this population. No? Helen Gottschall makes a very interesting work in this sense, but she's based in surveys and survey data. But there is a lot of ways to try to understand to estimate the populations in the countryside. You apply one. I understand that you apply one of these methods, but there is interesting to try to apply different methods in the same area to try to compare the data and the results that it can give to us. But we don't forget that all the calculations we will do, there is a lot of tables about ratios, about people in different kinds of villi. But I think that to go to a step ahead is to try to compare the different results of different ways to try to calculate the population. It's very complicated. It's very complicated because we don't have all the data. We don't have a lot of studies about necropolis, about the different composition of the population. But I think that we have to go ahead and try to step forward in this kind of studies, in a comparison in different methods to try to obtain the data.
Thank you, Anthony. I can use an example. One of the key elements that I think that are very useful for us to understand the dimension of the populations of a certain territory is the funerary evidence, and how many people are buried in a certain territory, and that relies on the quality and the intensity of the research. And in this territory, Alto Alentejo, we have a tremendous asymmetry because, for instance, we have 18 municipalities and we have Elvas. We have more necropolis than villae or farmsteads, that places for the people to live. We have more in number of sites and also lots of people buried there. As I told you before, in the Cheminée example, we have more than 200 people during 8 or 9 centuries. Because we had archaeologists, because we had in the 50s where the mechanized agriculture started to develop, and things were starting to appear in the landscape. These funerary evidences were brought to the surface. We had archaeologists that spotted the sites and started to excavate the tombs. And in other places, we don't have a single burial. We have sites for the living, but we don't have sites for the dead. So this kind of asymmetry reveals that, in fact, it's very difficult for us to quantify the people that were in the landscape, and also not only looking at the rural settlement, but the urban settlement. We have a so wide area with only one testified city, a city that probably had no more than 2,000 inhabitants. It's the desert almost. At least for the urban settlement, it's the desert. But of course, then we have the rural settlement, in which we have those big villae and the farmsteads and the peasant economy, etc., etc. This gives us a window to understand the vitality, the dynamic of this territory. But it's difficult to quantify because we cannot establish correlations, for instance, of one inhabited side to a necropolis, and we can correlate this kind of situation. In this territory, it's very difficult, it's very hard to establish this kind of direct relationships. Yes, but thank you. It is very stimulating for us to understand this kind of ideas and the directions.
Yes, I want to add it, another trouble that we have when we try to calculate the population in the Lusitanian region, in the northeast of Iberic Peninsula, because we have the same problem. We don't have so much people to try to make the system works. But then we are scared. There is no people here to try to make the system work. And then we consult to a specialist, to a demographer. And then he said, oh, it's very easy. There is another factor that we have to take into account. This the floating people, the people who is translating in different areas to try to make in vendimia periods or in harvesting periods, that is moving in different areas, goes in November to the Baetica to take the olives, goes to in June to make the wet harvest, then make in September to Lusitania, not to the south of Gallia, to make the vendimia. There is a lot of people moving in different areas, in different regions, that is complemented the people who is resident in the region all the year. It's not necessary in the case of the viticultural system. It's not necessary all the people live in the area to make all the system working. There is a lot of people that is moving on in different areas to try to make the system work. And this is a very, very interesting portation about the demograph that says, no, this is the concept, the technical concept in demography is floating people, floating population that is moving on in different areas. It's very, very interesting to try to take it into account.
Fully agree with you, Anthony. And we have here in Alentejo that kind of ethnographical memory until the 50s. Until the 50s, we have people that came from the High Tejo, the north of the Tagus River, and there were hundreds of people that seasonally moved from one place to the other, and they didn't settle in permanent places to stay. They built with timber. They built their own small houses, precarious houses that, if talking about archaeological perspective, that they don't leave a material evidence because they were timber buildings.
In Tuguria.
Tuguria, yes. And that is very interesting because it is still a part of the mental landscape of this territory. And also we have to consider some, not only the agricultural features of the Alto Alentejo, but also some specialized exploitation of economical resources that probably brought to this territory specialized and skilled workers, like the quarry activity in the marble area. And also we have evidences of mining activity, especially in the Tagus River. So probably we have not cities, but secondary settlements that hosted this kind of economical activities that were very relevant for the Roman Empire, also for Rome. The marble quarries were sent to the Western Mediterranean basin, and also the mining of gold probably feeded the Roman economy, and that probably that this kind of more skilled activity needed also a kind of population, a kind of density of population that we cannot estimate, but it was surely relevant for this territory. Not only agriculture, but also some relevant economical activities and specialized economical activities.
I was thinking with this discussion, let's say, about the calculation of population, no? Because models are, for me at least, are things, ways to see things that we cannot see with our own eyes. No, probably when we use these calculations, mathematical issues, or representation with different layers and so on, the idea is to create new data, let's say, but to give or to answer questions. No? Even sometimes we have more questions. Now I'm thinking, for example, with the model we present in the article about these surveyors, let's say, properties. No? I was going to share again the screen, because it can be interesting, for example, with this kind of methodology. For example, we see, okay, this is the part of a villa, but we know which area, let's say, are good or optimal for agricultural purposes, and which are not, which can be uses for foresty areas. So imagine that for demographical issues, no? Imagine that we can calculate. I don't do that. This is an idea I come thinking of this right now. Imagine that we can, let's say, assign, no, on the territory of, okay, this is a good soil for quality, and in, let's say, in Roman times, hypothetical way, it was cultivated. No? If we can more or less know the percentage of each territory that can be prepared, for example, for grain cultivation, then we can gather which is with the ratios. Okay, we need a lot of assumptions, but we can assume more or less the let's say, the grain cultivation, for example, of this territory. We can correlate this with the calories, and the calories we can correlate with the people, for example. So, for example, it's not like this area would have this number of population. No, it's not that the question. But we can say, okay, if this territory is going to supply grain for example, let's say Rome, no, with a nona or something like this, how much can produce? This is something that we can assume. And in this regard, if this territory is going to produce this, how many people we need to work in these fields to produce this grain? So I don't know, maybe, but the real problem for doing this in any case study is that we don't know exactly which areas are cultivated or not. With this model, we can assume. So maybe we can try something that can be worth it, no? To see if there is a, for example, I think that this is for creating an article about this, probably we need to compare with some areas where we already know good information to compare. No? If we know exactly more or less the quantity of population, or maybe the production areas, or something like this, probably. It's just a thought, no? How we can maybe doing that with the soil quality data.
I think this is the point, Pedro. I think this is the point. The point is the needs of people to make the system work. This is the question, no? The research question is how many people we need to make the system work, and then when we know the needs, we can extrapolate the people that is living all the year in the area, and then how many people in the floating population we need to try to make this work. I think that this is the point, the main point.
Well, there is any other questions or comments, ideas? Well, thank you very much for your time. As I told you, I will put this conversation. Probably I will split in several parts, like the conference or maybe the discussion. As said, this is the pilot, the first pilot example. I'm not secure that the video will come really good. We're going to experiment in time. So thank you very much for your time as you approach here. Even Andrés, you want to say something?
I just want to say hello and goodbye, and it was nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, Andrés.
Nice to see you, Andrés.
Thank you.
And thank